Just I'm posted up in Susan's office today because I have a lot of back-to-back meetings, so I feel very important sitting in an office when people walk by.
Well, that should be bringing a smile to your face.
Yeah. It's also nice too because then I don't have to like hunt around for a room.
Right.
I can just sit here and not have to move because
Yeah.
it's competition on this floor to get one of the smaller cubicle, like the smaller rooms, to take calls in.
So where is Susan today?
She's out on PTO this week. In New York, it's like the kids' spring break,
Right.
so a
It's
lot
run
of
up to
people are
Easter,
out.
isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
you guys don't seem to have the same um, sort of break round Easter that we do. So we have Good Friday off, which is this Friday coming, Good Friday, and then we have Easter Monday off as well. So there's this sort of 4 day weekend. Um,
I'm not sure how. I don't remember how it works here, but I
mm,
know my stepbrother, his spring break is not this week, it's next week.
right, right, perfect.
Um, I think it depends too. Like I don't know what the New York system is like, but we just had like it was Passover this past weekend too. So I think like between the two holidays kind of makes sense to have off.
Yeah.
Hey, Sierra.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Nice
Nice.
to meet you as well, Richard. How's it going, guys?
Hi, Chadwick. Nice to meet you too.
Uh, is there a delay on my end? It looks like, oh, Sierra, you were frozen for a second. Sorry about that.
Oh. Is it
Am I
not,
clear?
is it back to normal?
Yeah, now it is. Now it is. Yeah. Um, Actually, it keeps going back and forth with a little delay. So let me.
I hear you fine, Chadwick. Sierra, do you
I
Okay.
hear?
hear you, I hear you fine too. Is it me?
I
Okay,
think
good.
I
It's all
think
good now. It's all clear.
Chadwick, if we
Yeah.
can hear each other, I think we crack on and not worry about the video because you've sent quite a lot of questions through, and I'm conscious of Sierra's time. So as long as you can hear us, I think we just crack on.
Yeah,
Yeah. Are we
absolutely.
waiting for anyone else?
Yeah, Ryan, from my side will be joining, so I'll give him another minute or so. And
Yeah.
yeah, also, I know we sent through a good amount of questions, really more so today. We want to get a better understanding of where you guys have been at, where you're trying to go, dig a little bit further in terms of what we can get to, but no pressure or worries if we can't get to everything in terms of what we sent over.
Okay.
Um, is Alexander going to be the other person from your side joining?
Yeah, he just hopped on. Sorry, Alex, for the last minute invite, but I'm glad you were able to
Okay.
join.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, Alex, nice to meet you. Um,
You.
it might be easy if we start with some intros. We could start from our side if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Ryan, you want to lead us off?
Super. Yeah, thank you, Chadwick. Hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you. My name is Ryan Bolter. I am in the commercial team here at CARMA, working alongside Chadwick. I'm based in our London office, and my role here throughout this RFP is to support Chadwick, who is based in the States. As you can probably tell by the accent, I am here supporting him on this RFP response, but Chadwick is very much your lead. As I say, very nice to meet you all. And Chadwick, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, nice to meet you all as well. Echoing Ryan's sentiment, I am a sales director here in the US for Karma. So actually recently joined the team here last January. In terms of background, I used to work in Meltwater back in the day, so definitely familiar with everybody in the space and can really speak to the differences and nuances there. But yeah, we're really excited to be a part of this evaluation process. I know we sent over some questions for us today. Our objective is really just to really get some more insight into what have you guys been struggling with your current provider when it comes to your current needs, and how we can really best frame this in terms of the presentation and proposal, to make sure we're checking all the boxes for you guys. So yeah, that's background on us. If you guys want to give some background and then we can get into everything, that'd be great.
Sounds good. I don't know if I've introduced myself, but I'm Sierra. I just started here at Amex back in August, and basically a couple of days into the job was tasked with looking at some media monitoring vendors and seeing what's out there in the space. So we've kind of started uh, working on that a little bit more this year. And I also brought on Alex, who works with Andrew Johnson in the UK, and he's been helping out. He's been helping me with sort of speaking for the international teams and what their concerns are. And I'll let him introduce himself too.
Great.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I support Andrew, who is the head of international corporate affairs and communications at Amex. I've been with Amex for 6 years, I think, but in this role for about 2 years. And so I help Andrew oversee the 7 international clusters that we have in our communications team. And so, yeah, happy to support here and answer any questions you might have about any of the international capabilities that we're looking for.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
And I'm Richard, obviously ex-CARMA a year ago, but I have a small company with Paul Hender called Comms Clarity. Comms Clarity is appointed to assist Sierra and the team at American Express with the RFP process, with selecting a vendor, making sure the vendor's the right one, onboarding them correctly, and also developing the framework to improve their measurement from counts and amounts to something a bit more sophisticated. So working with the team on that as well. Paul's
Awesome.
Paul's on holiday this week, hence him not being on the call today.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for the intros. And also forgot to ask this at the start, but since we're not that familiar with WebEx, is there a way we could record this just to help us on our side with notes? No worries if not, just wanted to see off the
Yes,
bat.
let me start that.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So yeah, maybe Sierra and Alex for you guys, currently in terms of what you guys have been using with Cision and, when it comes to your media monitoring analysis, would love to start there to get a better understanding of, what are the major pain points, and then we can kind of unpack it as we go, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think I'll let you, Alex, kick that off since it was the international side that sort of came with starting to discuss what their pain points were. So you have more insight for that.
Yeah. So I think in international, we've been struggling a little bit with Cision in terms of consistency in the ways it can support across different markets. And that's with coverage when it comes to just news and media monitoring, but also with language capabilities. So a lot of translations, they either can't make or is AI driven. And so not always the most reliable. And so when it comes to the support, it was just very inconsistent across markets, especially with measurement as well. And there's more of a desire for a streamlined measurement system for all of international that could tie in with the US market as well. But right now, we and Cision together are struggling to come up with a way to report consistently and finding and using KPIs that make sense for the different international markets, regardless of the size or location. I'll maybe stop there and pause, and then we can continue after that. But those are the main top of mind struggles that we have in international.
Gotcha. Yeah, super helpful to know that. In terms of, the markets, are there specific markets you guys have specifically struggled with from a translation standpoint or overall, I guess, monitoring standpoint, that are key areas for you guys as you think about a partner for this?
We would mostly focus on the priority markets. So that would be like the Japan, Australia, India, Mexico, Canada. So we've been pretty decent in getting coverage there, but it's mostly the smaller markets that aren't supported now or aren't the most reliable. So we have smaller countries within Asia, like Taiwan, Singapore, different Asian-speaking countries. We've got some smaller European countries as well. So the Nordics, Benelux, France, Spain, Germany are ones that we really need some support on as well. And then smaller countries in South America as well, like Argentina, Bolivia, those are not as urgent as others, but yeah, just trying to see if we can get those on board as well with a new vendor.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like, obviously you guys have been dealing with, some issues when it comes to the different markets. Because of that, obviously, getting the coverage is one thing. On the RFP, you guys listed a few different KPIs, kind of the overarching themes of, sentiments, things of that nature. Would love to maybe unpack that a little further, I guess, going deeper. Are there, outside of kind of the standardized metrics, are there specific ones that maybe relate to business outcomes or business objectives that you guys have really struggled with that are important for this, or maybe some more clarity there would be helpful?
We haven't, so I think we're kind of doing things a little backwards. Like we're trying to create like a new framework over here. And I know that our past reporting has been just very like impressions, share of voice, what content has, what's doing well, what's not. And I think we're trying to solve for a couple problems where it's like, how can we have better reporting and support for some of the smaller markets? And then on a larger scale for the team, like how are our comms efforts impacting some of those larger business outcomes? And I know one piece that my manager Susan really wants to start working on is like understanding our reputation and how that's shifting over time. So, developing a reputation score and how can we feed into that and what data can we pull from some of the different vendors and partners that we use to give us a better look at that. And then eventually, I think, how can we show that our efforts potentially drive, I don't know, card member signups, things like that. Like, are we driving more sale? Like, what are we doing from a comms perspective to help with the business? Are we increasing market share? Like, there's different elements here that we want to incorporate. I know that might take a little bit longer. So I think there's like the solution of helping on reporting and still getting that data, but then also thinking about the bigger picture and how we can understand like what impact comms is driving, because we don't have anything at the moment for that. And open to solutions on how you guys would work as a partner to deliver that.
And a big reason for wanting to show what impact we have on acquisition, for example, is that we often rely on getting budgets from different business units to do PR for them. And so if we can show in this campaign or in this activation, we have this impact, I think we could try to get more budget because we are cutting back on some budgets this year rather than getting more. So I think the more we can show our benefit, the more that would help us as a business unit.
Yeah, that's really helpful to hear and understand because, we actually recently launched the reputation focused product, right? That's really kind of goes into the key pillars there and, tying the so what question. So we can definitely speak to that. In terms of, the reports you guys have been getting and where those have been going, who are the key stakeholders maybe involved, on your side that are receiving these reports? Is this kind of a small group? Is it a larger group? What does that makeup look like for you guys?
I know so we actually have paused reporting for, at least on our side, the ones that go to Jen Schuyler. And we haven't had a review in a while, but I think it's because mostly the reporting wasn't insightful or impactful, and it was just being like, here's the data, here's what happened, and nothing would come of it at the end. So I don't even know if they were being read. So we don't really have anything at the moment, but we're trying this year to change that and come up with a new solution. I don't know if that's different on your side, Alex, what, if you guys are still doing quarterly reports or not. I know we do a bunch of you know, recaps on any events we have and what media we got from that. But aside from that, there's nothing like consistent on a consistent cadence at the moment.
Yeah, we've given the same guidance to our international teams as well, and some of them are still doing it for themselves and their business partners, but there's no expectation from us to send them in anymore.
I was just wondering if I
For the
could
time being.
jump in there, Chadwick,
Yeah.
with a question on this, just in terms of this setup with the the local markets and you have the clusters, the international team, and the various representatives that are handling those, how does it currently work then with your current provider? So are they on the tool, so to speak, in market? So we say like the Benelux markets, are they actively using the tool, or is it a case of the CA&C team as a central team are doing the reporting and then reporting into the markets to say, we've done the analysis based on the coverage we've analyzed for your market. Here's where you are currently at this point, based on, say, more of those quantitative stats, or are they actually doing the reporting themselves? Just how do they actually interact with the media monitoring incumbent?
I don't think Cision does much for us in terms of reporting at the moment. We feed information to the central team in New York when it comes to reporting, but we get that from our different business partners, like agencies that we work with, PR agencies. But I don't know if Cision necessarily does any of the reporting for us. I don't believe so.
Okay. And are you, Alexander, are you physically in the Cision tool then looking at kind of individual pieces of coverage, like individual articles, clippings, or is it again it's a case of they'll feed you some numbers, you'll then take that?
They'll feed it to us. So I don't know if any of our managers and analysts are actually in the tool doing that themselves at the moment. I think most of it is being fed to us via email or clipping. And so I think some more flexibility about what we can look up as well. So if there's like a current ongoing issue or a reputational risk, it'd be helpful if we can go into the tool and then monitor current active news about it. Because at the moment, I think it's just being fed to us, and that it's not very specific. It's just very general and not always the most useful knowledge, I would say. It's not filtered down very well.
I also think there's like a little bit lack of, I think people don't know that they can have access. Like
Yeah.
so there's just a
Okay.
little bit of people aren't aware of what we're able to do or not. So that's a partly a bit of a fault on our side. Like I was able to get a seat. I didn't know I was assumed that we were able that we had to like go to other people, but we do have seats and I was able to get one. So I think people just don't know, and we never set up like training or understanding like how people can get like in there. I see Richard, you have a
Well, yeah, just I think it's probably fair to say that there's been some changes at Amex in terms of personnel and leadership and the team, and I think some stuff is sort of lost to corporate memory, including, frankly, some of the questions that you want to ask about the brief and the media list and all this stuff.
Right.
A lot of them, just the people who have put these things in place are no longer there.
I see.
Yeah, that's fair. And it sounds like you guys definitely need a more agile, partner and solution given some of the ad hoc needs. And that's kind of something we were curious on as well. I know in the brief, talks about like quarterly annual reports, how big a need for you guys is like ad hoc reporting and really just the ability to kind of do things as they come up, as you guys think about this.
I'm not like too sure on what we've needed done ad hoc. I mean, I know that last year we had a report that we needed done that was kind of like a last minute like year end recap for Jen that she requested in November. So like we kind of forecasted that happening again. So we're like aware that that might need to be something that's like included. It's not a true year end, but it's probably for her and her goals and what she's presenting for the end of the year. So just pieces like that. But I don't think we have that many ad hoc requests that come in. I know we have like a few like campaigns that I think we are scoped for, but there's not that much that comes in. I think at least on my side. I don't know about yours, Alex.
It would be good to have the option. So if we have a big activation or a campaign like Wimbledon sponsorship or Shop Small, something like that, if we just want to see internationally Shop Small, what were the numbers from start to finish? Just having the option to do that, I'm not sure how and if we're going to use that, but
Yeah.
That'd be good. And also to what Richard was saying earlier, I think when we have a new vendor in place, we want to be very intentional with who gets seats and making sure that the people in different markets have those seats, and then also educating them on how to use it, and then making them more self-sufficient so that they can go in and do that kind of reporting alongside what Karma would do for us.
That was that exactly to that point, Alex. In terms of what I was teasing there with the questions, was kind of like the change management conversation, really, that needs to be had internally. In terms of, there are cases where, for example, there is a global FMCG client that we work with, and they're effectively two users of the tool, and they serve all their global markets. There are some in the automotive space where they'll have each of their individual markets as users, and the platform's built for their specific use case within that market. That's what I was hoping to establish there, and it sounds to me it's a case of the latter, that as part of bringing on a tool, you will have your master users, which might be those of you on the call today, but then each individual user in the market or cluster owner having their own access to the tool, their own alert set up specific to what they need. So that's really good to know in there. With that, when it comes to, I know we touched upon the markets, and apologies if we're sort of jumping to different spots. With prioritization of the markets, there's a list here of about 30 or so markets that we've had. To me, doing some rough numbers in the background of like volume for coverage that we see, it's the usual suspects. It's the US, it's the UK that's really driving the bulk of the volume. And I know you've marked like Benelux as lower priority there. Are you happy for us to be quite creative in terms of when it comes to the media channels, so print, online, broadcast, so on and so forth, based on our research and understanding of those markets, to prioritize some in terms of, okay, for the budget you've got, it would be more cost effective for us to do print and online in the US, but actually for the Benelux markets, you're probably better off with just online in that case. Some we might be better to do broadcast for, others it might not, depending on. There's a lot of Reuters research into this that can point us in the right direction, and also our own expertise. Are you open then to us be able to just say, we think it's best for these markets to have this and this, or is it all markets need to have print, online, broadcast? Sorry, really long question there with a very simple question, but are you open to that suggestion there?
Yeah, definitely open to that. And I think the media lists we have also haven't been reviewed in a while. So I think having some creative solutions to what we should be looking at in 2025 and onward, that sort of advice would be welcomed, definitely.
I saw in one of your questions, you brought up like social coverage. I'm just curious about that. I know it's something that it would be good to have. So I think just we're looking at some of the options that have it. So I do know that it's important and would be helpful to be included. So
We can certainly have a look at, again, our opinion of what would be best to include. I imagine typically when it comes to the financial services, it's LinkedIn that's really a primary driver. A lot of people will have X, Twitter sitting underneath there as a kind of benchmark of sorts, but more and more seem to be pointing towards LinkedIn as a professional platform to look on there. So again, it's for Chadwick and I to discuss as we map out our response, but I imagine that sitting as kind of like the optional extra at this case of like, and if you want to do social media, here's the capabilities, and this is a rough indication of costs. Does that, in terms of sort of LinkedIn and X, does that align with your thinking, conversations you've had at this point? Are there any channels you've identified, platforms that you've identified in terms of social?
no, I mean that sounds good. I think I do know that there's limitations with LinkedIn, but
Quite manual, being completely candid. It's
okay. Yeah, but would like to hear that. I know like it's a big piece for us, and like I don't know what your solution is for LinkedIn. But I do know that it's a struggle that we have with our current social listening provider. So would be curious to hear about that in your
we
proposal.
can certainly flesh that out as well. I think generally speaking, the absence of an openly available API with LinkedIn makes it quite difficult for a lot of players in this market. It's a lot of cases of let's define the universe. So it might be a bunch of say senior stakeholders on your side that we want to monitor the engagement and the posts that they're doing, but also as well key competitors. What are they posting about on LinkedIn and being mentioned about on LinkedIn as well? But we can certainly flesh that out on there. That's not a problem at all.
Yeah, and that was something we were curious about in general for this. How important is the social media, listening, reporting capabilities, as you guys think about a partner for this? Is it kind of more on the lower ground, or is it baked into everything?
I think it's important, but we also have we have like I work on the social side here too, and we have our own solutions for that. So I think at the end of the day, if it's if if we need to lean in for just the the traditional media pieces for you, I think it's not it's important. It'd be cool. It'd be good to see what you offer. I think would be curious to see, but it's not like a high priority for us, I think.
Fair enough.
That's absolutely fine. I think there's a number of things in terms of if it's just own channels, it's a slightly different, easier solution. If it's other channels, then it becomes more of a monitoring piece, as you can imagine. In there, there's also ways where if you've got providers when it comes to social, we don't need to do that monitoring for you. We can integrate that data into the reporting. So there'll be a lot of instances where we'll do reporting, and part of that real world impact measurement is looking for correlations between comms efforts, the activities you've been doing, and then have we seen any spikes on social from the data that you're pulling through from, say, a brand watch, for example, something like that.
Yeah.
In there as well. Going back to that topic of reporting, then we talked about there's the quarterly and the annual reports. I know in the RFP you've got the chief communications officer that's feeding up to. It's very, I think Chadwick's touched upon this earlier in this call in terms of that audience. Is it a C-suite audience then that we're talking to with this reporting, quarterly and annual?
Yeah.
Okay, because that will help us refine, I guess, the level of detail that we need in those reports. Because if it's a data guru, as I like to call them, it's very stat numbers heavy, big data, C-suite. It's going to be a lot more of that. And what, say for example, chief communications officer, what are their burning questions that they've got right now from a comms perspective? What are they really wanting to know? Or am I opening Pandora's box with
Like you're
that question?
opening Pandora's box. We haven't really gotten there yet on our side. I think I just know that historically, I don't think the reports have been reviewed because again, it was a lot of like just numbers thrown in there and like data, and it wasn't like a little bit more concise and helpful and strategic. So we haven't, I don't want to say this. Uh, I just we've been told that like reporting isn't necessarily like numbers aren't like that important, and I want to show that they are. So
Right.
that gives you any insight into how reporting has been viewed. They don't think that it is important, and that's not true. So I the reports, yeah, it's just it's more for someone who is in on a daily basis, like looking at the data, and not meant for anyone in the C-suite. So
And that probably comes back to the real world impact side of things, because the question that often comes from those sorts of reports is, so what? Great reach, great impressions, but okay, I need to go to the board meeting now and tell them exactly how we turn the dial in our
exactly.
favor. So particularly with things like reputation, which feels like an intangible asset, but there are ways to correlate those efforts to reputation with the reporting. So that really, really helps. I don't know, Alexander, if you've got any further input on the reporting side of things.
I would just again stress the importance of the reputational risk, and just especially with the current climate, and just seeing how we navigate that, and if we can correlate our efforts to American Express's reputation and the management of it, just demonstrating how we are successfully doing that. I think if there's a creative and helpful solution to that, that's the main thing we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And would it be fair to say then that in terms of the reputation component, you guys outside of Cision, really haven't been leveraging any other outside agencies or partners for reputation insights, or is wrong
No,
in saying that?
that's not true. We have here, we have some other data so we have actually a reputational risk report that we pull on a monthly basis. I've been helping out the team, which is Melanie Bax, with we're revamping it at the moment. And I think a really important piece is that we don't have like a reputation score, any other data that we're pulling into it. I'm trying to help with the solution on the social side, and we're trying to find a vendor that could potentially help too from the media monitoring side as well to feed into that report. So we do have, and we work with like morning calls. We work with Morning Consult and like other vendors to help feed into that. So we do have it. It's just I think like it's not very it can be improved a lot, and there's a lot of like emailing to get the data to feed into that, and it would be helpful just to have sort of like a number and like have a threshold that if like we're outside of that threshold, like there's something going on, or like what's what is impacting our reputation negatively or positively. So it's just we do have something. I just don't think um it's not the best option because I don't think we're able to get the right data for it.
Gotcha. No, that's super helpful and good for us to know, because obviously we're going to focus on the media monitoring, the analysis, and really the global support structure framework we can help, but also speaking to our reputation offering and how we can intertwine the two, given you guys are in a unique case where you have needs in different areas. So yeah, really helpful on that end for us to understand.
I was
Yeah,
just
I know
thinking,
it's not in the RFP, that piece, but it's been more of a discussion that we've been having internally now, just recently um with how can we bring on a vendor that can help us with that too. Even if it's not like an immediate solution, we can scale up that way eventually and bring in more pieces to help with that.
I'm just thinking there is a less a question, but more for a note for myself and Chadwick too. I think we should send across in the meantime, as we're preparing the response, the reputation economy report. I think
Yeah.
it's just an example of what that reputation looks like from a UK banking standpoint. So we did that as looking at coverage and how that impacted upon reputation. Not related to this presentation as such, but just in the meantime, it's a little something just to put a bit more meat to the bones basically on there. So I'm just going to flag that as something for us to follow up with there. Okay. Sounds good. So reporting then, it's a C-suite audience. We're not too sure of exactly what they want to see. That's something that's being worked out on. And that kind of leads me, if we may, Chadwick, into the measurement framework, which I know is a big reason of Paul and Richard's involvement with this. So full disclosure, we work with clients where we will build the measurement framework. We will work with clients where we implement their and work to their measurement frameworks. From your perspective, Sierra Alexander, is it a case of when it comes to measurement frameworks, hands off, leave it, we've got that in hand, we're building that, and it's a case of we are to then report to it and implement it? Or would you like some input from us when it comes to building a measurement framework? When it comes to that response, where are you sitting?
Well, I mean, that's why we're working with Richard, and we haven't gotten to that piece yet. I know normally I think we would have that sort of fleshed out and then go find the vendors that can help support that. So I don't know if Richard, you have a
Yeah.
suggestion.
So,
We want that input.
well, yes, no, absolutely. So, as Sierra is saying, this process is sort of cart before horse, if you like, in that the working through the needs requirements and the and the framework that would be required should normally come ahead of choosing the vendor, but for a variety of reasons to do with things happening at Amex, that hasn't been possible. Any vendor that is brought on to replace their current incumbent is going to take a number of months to get through any process before they can be a vendor anyway, and the time frame for that is to begin in January. And I think what will happen is that the work that we will, once the vendor has been selected, which we hope will be within the next 4 to 8 weeks, two things will happen. One, the onboarding process of getting the new vendor as an approved, accredited supplier will be happening. But two, Comms Clarity will be working with their global teams on their evaluation framework. And as Paul and I created and developed the Amex framework, I think we're very well placed to do that. Now, what would obviously help American Express is to have a vendor that clearly understands the framework properly, transparently, and all of those approaches, which with obviously with full disclosure from our perspective, we believe is something that CARMA probably can do, and hence us suggesting that you got brought into the process.
Okay. Makes sense. So it's a case of, being completely transparent, like a lot of the reporting that we do is based on that very Amex framework that you yourself have pioneered, Richard. So yes, we're well placed to then build on that and have the human expertise to be able to report to that. So that makes sense then, because we can sort of rule out any kind of like framework workshops, which we sometimes might do with someone, then how we take that from a central to a more local rollout. But Comms Clarity have got that covered effectively in there, and it's a case of us being able to interpret that framework when it comes to our reporting and whatnot. I will flag that I think what we can, when it comes to the presentation and the reporting side of things, because of where we are with the process, it might be slightly more conceptual because we're still waiting for that framework to be defined. And it'll be probably a case of this is what we can do with reporting within the budget that you've defined, but obviously it's subject to reviewing that framework and what that looks like and whatnot in there. So that makes total sense. That answers my question there. In there. Okay. The other question that I had, and feel free if you've got any questions for us as well. I know we had a slight chat about social at this point. I don't want this to be an interrogation or an interview. The question I have is around about back to the reporting again, and there's a bit in the RFP where you talk about cutting through the noise and getting to relevance and whatnot. So when it comes to us doing our reporting, in a lot of cases, we will do that human evaluation of the coverage. So we'll have our team of coders going through there. It's becoming more and more AI driven in there, but at its core, it's a human evaluation of that coverage. For quarterly and annual reporting of a project of this size, what we would typically do is we would pull out a pool of coverage from a select media list. So it might be like, these are your tier one outlets in the US. They are your nationals, for example. In this point, it's your Wall Street Journal, so on and so forth, that we're focusing on. Is there, and it ties into the question about media lists, I suppose, and I know you flagged that they'll need to be reviewed. Is there any direction you can give us in terms of what a top tier media list looks like from your perspective for those markets that we could then hone in for our reporting purposes at this point?
We're working on that at the moment. So we do have a list. I don't have it, it's not complete yet, but we're working on it, if that would be helpful to give to you guys. I don't know if we're missing some people, Alex, are we still missing if we are? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm just waiting on Australia to submit theirs. But yeah, I'm not sure what the answer we did that question. Maybe Richard, if you've had a chance to look at the ones I sent across that Cision has, maybe do you have any insights into what would be a top tier in that?
Suffice it to say, the Cision list is not appropriate for your needs, and it needs revision and it needs some focus. I think for Chadwick and Ryan's benefit, I think the approach that you suggested, Ryan, sounds appropriate in that there will need to be a differentiator between a focus on the key media that matters to Amex, which is yet to be defined, which would get evaluated in perhaps one way, and then some of the other markets and the other media outside of that key media list might have to be evaluated more with the AI technologies that you were talking about to keep the program within the budget. We haven't started to talk about the budget yet, but that, I mean, I let the guys from Amex talk about it, but that budget is pretty much the budget. So, you know, you should adhere to what it says, which obviously creates its own challenges if you were to extend human verification, human enrichment, and media too widely. So it's going to be a balance, and I think we're going to be very interested to see what your approach is. Are we going to be able to give you the media list before next week or the week after, whenever the meeting is? No. Is work being done on a media list? Yes. And Comms Clarity will be supporting Alex and the regions to make sure that there's a level of consistency and credibility in that media list. And we may well be asking the vendors to support on that process as well, and with their perspectives from their experience of what media they think might matter. But it won't be ready by within 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. That's something. Oh, sorry, Alex.
Sorry, I was just going to say, with the budget we have, I'm realistic as well that we'll need to prioritize. So I know we're not going to get everything on our wish list. Even getting like a top 5 things that we can get in place that will help us, something like that. Anything is better than what we have now, essentially. So
Right.
I know it's a limited budget, but
it's probably fair to say that what they've got now is a ghost ship. It's I think it's sort of unwatched from Amex's end, and it's uncared for from the incumbent's end. So it's just adrift at the moment, and it needs focus. And Amex is keen to do that, but keen to do it with the right new partner.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay, that makes total sense. And to me, from what I'm sensing on this, to make that no longer a ghost ship, to make that something that truly matters is the real world impact side of things, the actual answering the so what question in there. And to do that, there will need to be an element of prioritizing the media, the types of media that we pull through across those markets. But at least it's a case of within that budget, here is actual the impact reporting that is needed in there as well. Okay, that makes total sense. In terms of the tool, the platform itself, because I noticed that the word tool is used quite a lot in this. So we will work with our clients like off-platform reporting, which is like the human curated reporting. There's also the platform itself. Give me an idea then of what you envisage using this platform for. Do you want it something where you can look through, I sort of touched upon this earlier, looking through clippings, or is it dashboard reporting? What in an ideal world will this tool do for you?
You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of people would probably want some like dashboards built out that they can. I think not everyone's gonna be tech savvy, but want to have options for people to go in and get what they need. And with some like, curated dashboards that are maybe like similar across that have like the same data, but for their markets, and then they can just like go in and pull what they need as well. Um, that's what I would assume. Because not everyone will be, know enough to like go write a query or whatever they have to do. Just want it to be simple and easy for everyone to use. So dashboards is what I pictured.
Yeah, and it won't necessarily be every colleague in international TNC has access to it, but maybe every director, which would be a much smaller group, or every head of communications in the different international clusters. But as long as there is someone in each market that can have access and go do something in it they want to do, that would be ideal.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Makes sense to me. Chadwick, any further questions from your side?
Even going off the back of the different markets and actually being the tool, and this might be too early too, but just in terms of the scope of that, and for users on your end, or would we be envisioning 10 to 20, 20 to 30? Again, maybe it's too early to even know, but I guess it's in terms of us doing the best to get buy-in from everybody, given that's been a pretty big issue, with your current provider. We obviously want to put a big emphasis on the ground support, training, onboarding. So maybe some ideas into what that can look like as you guys think about it.
Yeah, I think I originally said around like 30 to 40. I think around there. I think that's would be as many seats as we would want. I don't remember like who exactly, but I do also know that like we might have like an agency partner in there as well. So, um,
Yeah, I think for international,
yeah.
the minimum would be 10 to 20, I would say.
Oh, so maybe like 40 to 50.
Okay.
40, yeah.
And we can support again as many as needed, really, just to get an idea of what we'll be supporting potentially in the future. Um, in terms of Ryan, as we think about the questions, was there anything else top of mind for you?
I suppose that probably maybe a blaring one that we've not covered off actually is competitors. So, there's American Express, there's going to be the visas of this world and so on and so forth. So,
Yeah.
is competitor monitoring a part of this? I can see share of voice in there, so I'm
Yes.
assuming so.
Yeah, that's a big piece. I think we would want to have I think we have about like what, five or six. Um, so it's important. I know that we want to understand where we stand against our competitors. So that is important.
hmm And I'm assuming that that plays into the reputation side of things as well, in terms of there's a peer-to-peer benchmarking of reputation within that as well.
Hmm.
Okay, cool. Because we'll have to, yeah, it'll just be a case of us factoring in volumes of coverage across those markets and what that competitor list looks like. Um, is it a defined list that you're working from, Sierra Alexander, or can it change at this point? Because if it's the former, if you can share that list with us,
Share it with you.
that'd
Yeah.
be great, and then we can factor that into the monitoring side of things as well, and how we can be a bit more creative with the pricing there as well.
I can add it in this chat right now.
Perfect.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and as we think about too the presentation, I would assume, given kind of how budgets are and what that's looking like, we are envisioning potentially showcasing, hey, this is what you can get for the 300. This is what you could get with other numbers. This is what you could get at the final level, as an example. But maybe not going down that route, given it seems to be a pretty strict budget. Or I guess what would be most helpful when we do present this in terms of kind of what you guys can, get from a partnership based on the different levels.
I mean, I think, yeah, we do have a pretty strict budget. I haven't had, I don't know if there's flexibility. I also know that I don't know if you do this, but we're open to sort of like briefing, like a daily briefing, sort of
Like
like,
a news briefing.
yeah, like something like that we're open to. So obviously, like that's would be in addition to our budget. So, but we are open to seeing something like that as well.
Okay.
Like what you offer and what that looks like.
Okay. Yeah, we can kind of present, hey, this is what we can do based on our conversation, based on the RFP. This will cover you, for the baseline needs. But then guess what? If you guys are also interested in, daily news briefing, in-depth reputation analysis on a, whatever basis. Okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's something
that
that
would be
we can
helpful.
definitely do.
hmm I'm conscious, one, of time, and also the fact that we have been grilling you for the last 47 minutes. Do you have any initial questions for us? I know, again, we talked a little bit about social media. You obviously had the conversation with Sam and Orla, and they gave a bit of information about Karma and our approach. Anything top of mind that you would like to ask us that we can answer at this point?
Internationally, and just with Karma support in general, how does it work with like real life analysts, and would there be any supporting this account, and where would they be based?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So what are we up to now, Chadwick? We've just opened Tokyo. So we have
Yeah, I think
22,
22 now. 22 or
22
23.
offices, 22 international offices, which enables us to have teams sort of spread all over, really. One thing we do for our some of our clients of this tier is there's the option to do follow the sun approach. So you will have analysts working in the UK that then hand over to the US, that then hand over to Asia, and the cycle repeats itself in there. So when it comes to human analysts and those that are producing reports, those that are coding coverage, there's the possibility to do a follow the sun approach effectively with teams that we've got in each region in there. Is that the question you were asking? Sorry, but is that
Yeah. I think for the presentation, it'd just be helpful to know what the different locations are and what that approach could look like if we decide to go
I
for
think
that.
Alex is also interested in understanding the customer support side of things. So not just where it's been coded and how it's been coded, but how is his international team going to be supported with queries on time zone and in region?
Yes. So again, similar point with that follow the sun approach. So there is, again, that FMCG client I alluded to earlier that's recently onboarded. They will have CS support that's in a follow the sun approach as well, because we've got the team that's with Chadwick in the US, for example, on those East and West time zones there. We've got CS support in the UK, and then there's also CS support that we have based in Portugal that straddles kind of Middle Eastern time zones as well in there. So in terms of how I imagine the setup working is that there is a naturally you've got your account director that's effectively your head commercial person that is responsible for steering the account and moving it forward, that then is supported by a CS team that can be based in different regions depending on the scope of work there. So there could be a team that supports in the US and a team that supports in the UK. Again, that FMCG client, they're two people. They are based in the UK and the US. So for them, they just want someone on hand within those two time zones that are able to answer queries and have that passover of work in there. In terms of how it currently works, we've talked about it as a go ship, and I'm asking questions again now. On that question, on that point of CS support, what is the ideal scenario? Is it helpful for you to have a central person to be working all communications through? Is it more of a localized approach? What's your preference in this process?
Not sure if we necessarily have a preference. It's just with some of the local clippings and news that international teams get, often it's AI translated and not the most accurate. And so if there would be human translations in some of those locations rather than AI, that kind of thing.
I see.
But
Okay.
that's like if we had a very large budget kind of thing. But I figured it was worth just checking what that approach could be if we had more resources.
Yeah, that's a good question. The translation one is a common one because there are naturally limitations to automatic translations in there. It is the default, generally speaking, in there. We are lucky to have a number of languages in house that work within the content side of things, which is great. But I'm not going to sit here and promise you every single language that's in those listed markets and whatnot. So, but we can speak to that in the presentation as to what kind of support, particularly the translations, because I know it's one of the first things that you said, Alexander, was issues with translations in those local markets. So, we can have that as one of the top challenges that needs addressing, and put together something that addresses that in terms of that translation side of things.
Yeah, and that's mostly in the lower priority markets. So it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it would be in an ideal world we have it, but if we can't have it because of our resources, then that is also understandable and fine.
Cool. Any other questions for us?
I mean, the only thing I would just be curious about is I think in the last call we had, you guys had a service with WhatsApp to ping us for crisis, for monitoring, and I'm just curious about that service a little bit. Doesn't have to be in the demo per se, just curious what you guys do. Just again, this and the brief would be nice to see, but it doesn't have to be in the presentation if it's gonna go longer. Just curious about those services that you offer.
Yeah. So there are a couple of buckets that falls into in terms of real-time alerts in
Yeah.
there. So I can imagine naturally for crisis comms, very important. So there's a couple of ways that you can navigate this. So the first and cheapest, so we say, is the spike alerts in there. So that is having automated spike alerts set up in the platform that will, once it crosses a certain threshold, as you say, it will then send out an email alert to the relevant members that need to be notified in there, and they just automatically run in the background. So it could be things like Amex and mentions of fraud, for example. Oh, we're getting 100 mentions in a short period of time. Okay, that will send out an alert, and you need to jump on this. Where it comes into things like WhatsApp, that is done by our real-time alerts team that's situated in the Middle East. And they are working 24/7. And what they are doing is it's a more manual process there of in tandem with those alerts. They're basically, whenever the system picks up a piece of coverage related to, say, for example, it could be, in a government scenario, there could be a government and a negative piece of a negative thought piece that comes out around their human rights record, for example, hypothetically. The team will then send a curated WhatsApp alert as soon as that coverage lands in the system and flags to the relevant WhatsApp number of the person that needs to see that. The thing to be mindful of that is that it's a very human-driven process because of the way that WhatsApp works. It's not an automation that Meta will allow people to have set up, so it has to be sent manually. As such, for anything manual, there is a cost associated with that. So I think on the one side, we could present two scenarios, I think, in terms of spike alerts, which are built into the system anyway. But then also there's the WhatsApp alerts as well as a potential one of those optional extra on the shopping list as well, if that is something that's of importance. But we might find that those automated alerts ticks off that kind of crisis comms flagging there.
Okay, good to know.
That's interesting.
Cool. Super. Richard, Chadwick, anything from your side?
I obviously know your company very well, so I don't have questions about it. And I think it was important for you to hear directly from the horse's mouth what they need. And we'll all be looking forward to seeing your approach to the process.
Super.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you guys for the insight to all of our questions.
Yeah, of
Definitely
course.
going to be helpful to really frame this in the best light to show how we could best support you guys in this moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for making the time. And I'm assuming, we've got the presentation on the 29th. And then I know, Richard, you said sort of a period of 4 to 6 weeks or so of making a decision. Are there any further steps as part of this RFP beyond the presentation, or is it presentation's done, we're now going to committee to basically make a decision at this point?
I think
Yeah.
there'll be lots more questions
And
before
we're
an
doing a
ultimate
few,
decision is made.
yeah, and we're doing a few demos as well, with like actually using a tool. Some of our directors this week and next week are testing some of the actual tools, if that's a possibility as well for CARMA. So we can discuss that later if you'd like.
Yeah, that sounds good. We were thinking that as part of the presentation, we would have a project running that's built, a top level project that's built for you to really show the functionality of the tool as part of that presentation. We could then look to open that up after the presentation for a set period of time and have them playing around with it in there as well. So good to know. We can factor that in as a step that we need to tick off as well.
Okay. Great.
Super. Okay. Thank you all very much, and
Thanks,
a pleasure
guys.
to meet you, and good to speak to you again, Richard.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Have a
Bye.
good
Bye.
Take care now. Bye bye.